All right, happy snowy Sunday to you. I knew that there was more snow that was still to come this year. I knew that deep down inside, but I allowed myself to believe that it was over, the warm weather was here to stay, and it turns out I should have listened to my first impulse. In 2009, actually, Amber and I had the privilege of building our first home in Central Florida. I think we've got a picture of our little bungalow here on the screen for you. We literally went from like nothing to something existing, and we were the ones that were able to bring that to pass. It was very, very cool. We were so excited at the thought of building a home from scratch. You know, the idea that you could live in a place that nobody else had ever lived in before, that struck us as very, very cool. But we did not realize how many decisions you would have to make in order to build a home from scratch. Some of you guys have been through this process. You know what it's like. We were totally overwhelmed by the amount of choices we had. Now, they warned us from the very beginning. They said, listen, you guys are going to feel like you're making constant decisions, and it's going to be very, very overwhelming. And so they offered us a service in which a designer would partner with us to help us make all of these choices that we needed to for our home. But I was like, nah, we got good taste, and we is smart, so we could choose these things for ourselves, right? So we declined their service, and I got to tell you, that was a big mistake, okay? We had to choose basically everything for this house. It started with the lot. Were we going to choose something near the front of the neighborhood where it was easy access in and out, or at the back of the neighborhood where it was a little more quiet? We had to choose the styles of cabinets and the types of countertops and the brand of appliances, the design of every water fixture. We had to choose the color of both the interior and the exterior paint, plus the carpet and the landscaping. I know this is first world problems. I get it. I totally understand that I'm complaining about the fact that we had the privilege of building a house. But I do have to tell you, we were overwhelmed by the number of decisions that we were facing. Why? Not because any of those single choices were particularly hard, but when you're building something, you have to be able to see what doesn't exist yet. You have to be able to have the vision to understand how all the little choices that you make today are going to come together tomorrow and build or form something truly great. That ability to have vision, to see things that are not yet reality, but then to push forward until they become reality, that's an absolute necessity if you're ever going to build something great in life. Whether it's a home or something else altogether, you have to be able to see what doesn't exist yet. You have to be able to make the hard daily choices in order to bring that thing to pass if you ever want to enjoy it. By the way, we did build a great little house, didn't we? I mean, I think we nailed every single one of the choices that we had to make for that home, with one exception. The day we took possession of that house, we both walked in the front door and immediately hated the carpet we chose. So, you can't win them all right? Last week, we read the story of King David and how he wanted to build something. In fact, he had a desire to build the temple for God. We talked about the fact that for 500 years, the Israelites had a church that was portable. It was a tent called the tabernacle, and it traveled with them wherever it was that they wandered. But once they moved into the promised land, the people settled down, and they built homes, and they developed cities, and this entire time that they were doing all of this building and settling, the God's house remained this ancient and humble tent called the tabernacle. One day, King David begins to feel convicted that the Israelites had accepted God's blessing without honoring him for all of those blessings. And so David creates a plan that's going to take the Lord's house from this tabernacle to this wonderful, wonderful temple. We read last week in 2 Samuel chapter number 7 how God spoke to David. And God essentially said to David, I love the idea, bro. It's a good one, all right? However, it's not going to be you that builds my temple. Instead, it's going to be your son Solomon that's going to have that privilege. And so God is essentially asking him, are you still willing, David, to do the hard preparatory work if you're never going to see the temple, much less get any of the credit for it? If you have the idea, but somebody executes and gets all the glory for it, are you still on board? God is essentially asking David to come to terms with whose glory he's really seeking after. David, are you more concerned with your reputation, your fame, your glory, or are you more concerned with mine? Now, we talked about the fact that David is a man of faith and obedience. The scripture says that he was a man after God's own heart. And so David gets to work. For the next 40 years, Yeah, you heard that right. For 40 years, David gathers together supplies for the temple, and he begins to create the plans that will eventually become the temple. He's not going to be the one to build God's house, but he's going to make sure that when the time comes, Solomon has everything he needs. So we're going to pick up the story today in 1 Chronicles chapter 28. 1 Chronicles chapter 28. We'll begin reading in verse 1. All the scriptures are going to be on the screen, but we're going to work our way through the majority of the chapter here. In verse number 1, we read this. David, again, this is 40 years after what we talked about last week. David summoned all of the officials of Israel to Jerusalem, the leaders of the tribes, the commanders of the army divisions, the other generals and captains, the overseers of the royal property and livestock, the palace officials, the mighty men, and all the other brave warriors in the kingdom. David rose to his feet and said, "My brothers and my people, it was my desire to build a temple where the ark of the Lord's covenant, that is God's footstool, could rest permanently. I made the necessary preparations for building it, but God said to me, 'You must not build a temple to honor my name, for you are a warrior and have shed much blood.' God said to me, 'Your son Solomon will build my temple and its courtyards, for I have chosen him as my son, and I will be his father. And if he continues to obey my commands and regulations as he does now, I will make his kingdom last forever.' So now, with God as our witness and in the sight of all Israel, the Lord's assembly, I give you this charge. Be careful to obey all the commands of the Lord your God, so that you may continue to possess this good land and leave it to your children as a permanent inheritance." Verse 11, then David gave Solomon the plans for the temple and its surroundings, including the entry room, the storerooms, the upstairs room, the inner rooms, and the inner sanctuary, which was the place of atonement. David also gave Solomon all the plans he had in mind for the courtyards of the Lord's temple, the outside rooms, the treasuries, and the rooms of the gifts dedicated to the Lord. The king also gave Solomon the instructions concerning the work of the various divisions of priests and Levites in the temple of the Lord, and he gave specifications for the items in the temple that were to be used for service. David gave instructions regarding how much gold and silver should be used to make the items needed for service. He told Solomon the amount of gold needed for the gold lampstands and lamps, and the amount of silver for the silver lampstands and lamps, depending on how each would be used. He designated the amount of gold for the table on which the bread of presence would be placed, and the amount of silver for the other tables. David also designated the amount of gold for the solid gold meat hooks that are used to handle the sacrificial meat, and for the basins and pitchers and dishes, as well as the amount of silver for every individual dish. He designated the amount of refined gold for the altar of incense. Finally, he gave Solomon the plan for the Lord's chariot, the golden cherubim, where the wings were stretched out over the ark of the Lord's covenant. Every part of this plan, David told Solomon, was given to me in writing from the hand of the Lord. Then David continued, "Be strong and courageous and do the work. Don't be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord my God is with you. He will not fail you or forsake you. He will see to it that all the work related to the temple of the Lord is finished correctly. The various divisions of priests and Levites will serve in the temple of God. Others with skills of every kind will also volunteer, and the officials and the entire nation are at your command." You know, every time I read this passage, I kind of have to chuckle a little bit, because it seems to me like David might have been a bit of a control freak. If you were paying attention, David basically designed everything, and he handed it to Solomon, and he's like, "I can't build it, but you're going to build it the way I tell you to build it, okay?" Not only did he gather a ton of supplies, but he came up with the architectural drawings and the construction plans. He chose the interior decorating, and then he created the employee handbook for how the priests were going to function inside of the temple. Verse 17 says that David even designed the plates and silverware that would be used there in the Israelites' church. I'm going to tell you something right now. If Connect Church manages to find a new building, I'm not going to be the one designing it, okay? We'll leave that to Amber or people with better taste. If I do it, it's going to look like a sad man cave. But David, he was committed. He was going to make sure that everything was done just right. Now, I am definitely surprised and maybe a little suspicious by how involved David was in the preparation and even the planning and construction of the temple. But, you know, this chapter, for all of its details and minutia, and it seems to kind of be like, I don't know, is all of this necessary? It really becomes a great reminder that building something great doesn't happen by accident. It requires careful planning. Does it dawn on you, like, how wild it is that it took David 40 years to gather the necessary materials and to develop the plans to construct the temple? The Israelites seemed to know that they couldn't come up with some half-cooked idea and then expect everything to work out. So they were patient and they were thorough to make sure that they had everything they needed, they could finish what they started, and properly honor God for who he was and what he had done. You know, Jesus himself spoke about the importance of this particular mindset. There was a parable that he told in Luke chapter number 14. In Luke 14, Jesus says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, this person began to build and wasn't able to finish. Now, Connect Church is not building anything as grand as Solomon's temple, okay? I don't think that it's going to take us 40 plus years to get into our next home. Amen. From our lips to God's ears, all right? But you know what I do want to do this morning? I want to follow David's example just a little bit. I actually want to peel back the curtain, and I want to help you to see some of the preparatory work that we have been doing kind of behind the scenes, as like we've been doing normal ministry, Sunday services, midweek small groups, all that sort of stuff. We have been hard at work preparing for and actively searching for our church's next home. And I thought you might like to see a little bit of what we have been up to. So by way of some context, you might remember that our church started in 2016. And when we first started meeting and having Sunday services, we were at the Cineplex up at Cross Iron Mills. How many guys were with us at the Cineplex? Even once. All right, a few of you guys were, for sure, all right? We were there from 2016 until 2020 when the pando hit. And once that thing came to pass, we lost our lease there at the Cineplex. These are some of my fondest memories of Connect Church. Those were hard days because we were just barely getting started, and every Sunday felt like make or break. Like if we had a bad Sunday, it was entirely possible the whole church would die. And yet it was really cool to roll into that theater and to work together to transform it into a place of worship and then tear it all down and, dream about the next week and new people that were going to come and brand new faith decisions. I mean, it was such a special time. But when we lost our lease there because of the pandemic, we had to go online. How many guys were with us during the online season? Okay, very few of you, all right? That was without a doubt the hardest time in our church's life. For 67 weeks, more than a year, we only had online services with a handful of Sunday night gatherings sprinkled in at various churches that we could rent around the city. We had no clue when or if the movie theater was ever going to open again. You know what I mean? Do you remember when we were like, this might be the end of movie theaters forever, y'all? Do you remember that? We were really thinking that, and we were concerned because we were like, that means the end of the place that we have church, okay? So we weren't sure what was going to happen, and with the help of our overseers and our financial directors, we started thinking we need to find a place of our own. A place that we have access to full time, a place where somebody can't cancel the contract and say, no, you guys can't have service here right now. And so we began the process of searching for our own space. Obviously, we eventually landed here at our current building. And, there's so much to love about the space that we are inside of right now. There was so much to love when we first saw it. Like, it's a nice building. Absolutely, right? It's in good repair. Everything is designed really well. We love that. It's easy to get to. It was within kind of the area of the city that we were looking in. The parking is tight, but it is manageable. Most importantly, we had a landlord that was willing to rent to a young church, which was surprisingly difficult. We had so many commercial landlords in this city turn us down and say, like, I'm not renting to a church. You're crazy, all right? So the fact that we had somebody that was willing to rent to us was a good thing. But we also know when we moved in here that this space had some pretty significant limitations. Most obviously, the overall size of the building. Pre-pandemic, Connect was a church of about 300 people on Sunday, and this auditorium seats 175 people. So we didn't know how many people were coming back, once we opened up services again, but we had to assume that everybody was coming back. Maybe a little naive. It didn't quite work out that way, but we believed for it, all right? And so anyway, we knew that with a 175-seat auditorium and a 300-person congregation, we were immediately going to be at 2 services. Hey, no big deal. We were already doing 2 services up at the Cineplex, right? And then we thought, okay, we could conceivably do 3 services on Sunday here, and at 3 services, we could probably support 500 or 600 people on any given Sunday for our congregation. So this building, it seemed like a great and logical next step for us as we were thinking about our future. We understood when we moved into this building that it was going to be a relatively short-term solution for us. That as soon as we got to 3 services and 500 plus on Sunday, we were going to have to find someplace else. Here we are. 3 services, 500 plus on a typical Sunday. And so we are actively in the process of looking for a new space. For the last 18 months or so, myself and Amber, our financial directors, our staff, and our real estate broker have been searching, scouring this city, trying to find a place that would be fit for the next chapter of our particular story. In fact, I'll put here on the screen some photos of actual buildings that we have toured. We have, in some cases, made offers on these properties, and we have been in them, deep in the weeds, trying to find the next door that God's going to open. Now, none of these are on the table anymore, okay? None of them worked out for various reasons. All of them had kind of their own issues and things like that, but that's okay. We haven't found the right place yet, but I thought you guys might like to know what it is that we're looking for in our next home. I might peel back the curtain a little bit further and help you to understand what our dreams are, what our vision is set on, what the Lord has told us we're going to need for the coming season. And then we're going to talk about how we can partner together to make that happen. So let's talk a little bit about Connect's future home. What is it that we're looking for? How do we ensure that we get into the right place that's not going to be 3 or 4 years down the road and I'm standing back on stage saying, guys, we got to move again, all right? We don't want that. We want to get into a place that can be our home for the next decade or even longer. Now, if the Lord wants to bring us explosive growth and we have to make hard decisions, great, okay? But the goal is to get into a place that we know is going to be fit for us for the long term. So here are a few of the things that we're looking for as a congregation. We're looking for a building that's already constructed. Some of you guys are like, have you ever thought about building? Yes, we thought about building, but as you know, there's not a lot of undeveloped land in the city. If you want undeveloped land, you got to go way out towards like past Chestermere or something, you know what I mean? It's a ways, okay? And not only that, building something from the ground up is the most expensive and time-consuming way to build. So we're certainly looking for something that's already constructed that we could just kind of renovate and move into and make it our home. We're looking for something that is less than 15 minutes away from our current location. That's one of our kind of non-negotiables. You guys don't ever have to worry that we're going to decide to move this church to the south end of the city. I don't care if we find the perfect place. We're not going to move our congregation that far because it wouldn't be fair to ask you guys to drive that far. However, there are realities that we have to deal with, and we're not likely to find the perfect building a block away from here. And so you may need to drive just a little bit further to get wherever the Lord wants us to go, but we're going to do our best to keep it within a 15-minute radius. On the south side of town, that takes us down to about Memorial Avenue. On the north side of town, that takes us all the way up to Cross Iron. And on the west side of town, that takes us to the middle section. If I told you some neighborhoods, most of you wouldn't even know about them. And on the east side, it takes us all the way to the edge of our city, okay? So we're looking for something within that 15-minute radius from where we're currently at. We're looking for a building that's about 20,000 square feet in total. The church that we're in right now, this building is 10,000 square feet. 5,000 on the first floor, 5,000 on the second floor. So we're looking for something that's double the size of what we have right now. We're also looking for something that will give us a 400-seat auditorium at a minimum. So 175 right now, wouldn't it be great if we had 400? We could basically get the entire church in one room at a time. That would be amazing, all right? We're looking for something that has more than at least 70 parking spots. This is one of the big hang-ups. There's not a lot of buildings with that kind of parking in the city. They're zoned properly and all that jazz. And so this is something that we're searching hard for, and it becomes one of the major issues. We find so so many buildings that are great in every other way, but they have 13 parking spots. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we have 36 out here right now. So there's no way we can cut that by a third, all right? We're looking for something with what's called IG zoning here in the city. I know you don't care about this. I'm just letting you know, okay? The city is so weird, man, about like where they allow churches to meet and where they don't allow churches to meet. And there's this very narrow type of buildings that we can actually hold church in. And so one of the things we're looking for is a building that's zoned IG. And then finally, the last thing that we're looking for is something with a purchase price in the realm or range of $3 to $4 million. Now, we are open to the idea of a long-term lease, but it's not our primary choice. That's not the first thing. We would rather own than rent, right? If we're going to put a lot of money into a building over the course of a couple of decades, then we don't want to continue to pay that to the landlord. We want to build that equity ourselves. And so we're looking to purchase, and what a building that is this size and in the repair we need and all that sort of thing is somewhere around $4 million. Probably. We might get lucky and the Lord will bless us with something a little bit cheaper. To give you just a little context, all right, one of the things I'm just committed to here at Connect always, but especially in this season where we're trying to build and move forward and stuff like that, is as much transparency as I can possibly give you guys, okay? So we pay currently in the building we're at right now $12,000 a month to rent this place. A mortgage in the $3 to $4 million range is going to be like $25,000 a month. So it's a significant increase in the amount of money that we would pay in order to get there. Now you say, well, Dan, there's no way, man. There's no way. Can I just tell you a quick story of your generosity and God's faithfulness? Okay. When we were at the Cineplex and we were just renting that bad boy for a couple hours on Sunday morning, we paid $4,000 a month. And when we found this building and we found out that at the time it was going to be $10,000 or $11,000 in rent, we were like, how? Like, our church is online. I don't even know if we have a church anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is crazy. There's no way that we could double or triple the amount of money that we're spending on our facilities every single month. But we went to the directors. We prayed about it. We said, I believe God is in this. I know financially this is a massive stretch. But if God is calling us forward, he will supply every one of our needs according to his riches in Christ Jesus. And so our directors prayed about it. And I want to give them all the honor that they are due. They made the faithful decision to stretch and to say, yes, we'll take on the cost of this particular building, believing that God, through the generosity of his people, will take care of that particular cost for us. And you have. So when I look at a new facility and it's double what we're paying now, I say, whew, that's a lot, but God's done it once. Why should I doubt that he would do it again? Are you with me? God is able to provide for every single thing we need. Now, why do I share all of these details with you, okay? I share them for a couple of reasons. The first is, I want you to understand that when we talk about finding a new home for Connect, this is not wishful thinking. This is not just like Dan and Amber being like, ooh, let's get bigger, let's get better, let's get flashier. Wouldn't that be cool? It's not like, hey, here's our dream and who knows how we're going to get there, when we're going to get there, anything like that. We are waist deep right now in the process of finding a space. Any one of those properties that we had already looked at, if the deal had gone just a little bit differently, months ago, I would have been standing before you saying, we have an opportunity to purchase a property. It's time for us to take a vote and decide whether this is the door that God is opening. And so we are really on the brink in many ways of what is to come next. And so I do want you to understand that when we have a series like this, or you hear in our giving moments each Sunday, that we're talking about finding a new home for Connect Church. This is not a pipe dream. This is not a pie in the sky sort of wish. This is a genuine project that we are working at constantly. And don't be surprised if we come to you even soon and we say, hey, we've got some choices that we need to make. But the second reason that I tell you all of this is because I need your help. I need your help in a couple of ways. So first and foremost, I need your help in prayer. I need you as a congregation to support us more specifically in prayer. I know many of you have been praying, God, would you open doors and give Connect a bigger building? And that's great. That's an awesome prayer to pray. But now that you understand these sorts of details that we're looking for, you can pray specifically. You can say, not just, God, give us a bigger building, but you can say, God, would you give us a building that's at least 20,000 square feet? God, not just would you give us a building that's close by, but would you give us a building that's within that 15-minute search zone that they're looking for? Would you just open the doors on the right facility for our church? We can pray specifically, and I believe the more specific our prayers, the more honoring to God, and I believe God is more likely to honor and answer those prayers as we pray them specifically. So I'm encouraging every one of you. Listen, prayer is one of the most tangible and helpful things that you can do to help us get into our new space. You want to help us make room? Then pray, pray, pray. Make this a regular matter of your prayer life. Second reason, I think, at this point, that I'm asking you guys to, that I give you all these details and I need your help is because some of you are connected in the real estate world here, in the business world, the property ownership world, whatever it may be. And I just want you to keep your ears open, okay? There are a few people in our congregation that I know work in this area, in this industry, and I've asked them to keep their ears open, and they always come to me and they're like, oh, I found a great spot. And I'm like, where is it? And they're like, way out on the west side of the city. And I'm like, great, keep looking, you know? So like, I understand you may not, your job is not to vet all of these properties or anything like that. I'm just saying, if you hear of something that generally meets these qualities, then let me know about them. We'll pass it on to our real estate broker. Yeah, again, we just never know where God might open doors. We never know how God might reveal the next steps that he wants our congregation to take. I know it might seem hard to believe, but God might speak to one of you. You may have a relationship or a connection that God uses to get us into whatever the next chapter might look like for us, all right? Now, there are other things that we want in a potential building. Of course, there are more wants than needs, all right? And maybe we'll share those with you in the days to come. Next week, we're going to talk more about the financial side of this project, and then leading up to Easter, we're actually going to have a page on our website that's going to include all of this building data, all the financial data, and it'll be there, and we'll give you consistent updates so you can know what's going on, you can pray, you can give, all of those different things. That's what's coming over the next couple weeks. Now, here's what I know. I know that you did not come to church this morning to get an update on our building. I know you did not brave the cold, slip slide your way down Deerfoot so you could hear me talk about zoning. I know this. I really, really do, okay? The last thing I would ever want is for you to walk out of church this morning going, that service could have been an email, man. I don't want to waste your time. I really don't. So what I want to do with the remainder of our time together, we got about 10 minutes or so left. What I want to do in the remainder of our time together is to direct your attention back to David's final words in 1 Chronicles chapter 28. We've already read them, but I think it would be helpful if we read them again, and then we kind of started to tease out what David is saying here. I think it's really, really important. 1 Chronicles chapter 28, starting in verse 20, David continued, "Be strong and courageous and do the work. Don't be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord God, my God, is with you. He will not fail you or forsake you. He will see to it that all the work related to the temple of the Lord is finished correctly. The various divisions of priests and Levites will serve in the temple of God. Others with skills of every kind will also volunteer, and the officials and the entire nation are at your command." You know, in his closing remarks here, David highlights three tensions of building something great. He gives us three tensions, three somewhat difficulties, truths maybe, that are not always easy to comprehend, but they nevertheless are reality. David gives us three tensions of building something great. And while David is speaking here specifically about building the Old Testament temple, okay, the wisdom that he gives applies to building anything of significance. These same three tensions will be present if you're building a great marriage. These same three tensions are going to be present if you're building a new house. They'll be present if you're building a strong family, if you're building a thriving business, if you're building a long-lasting legacy. The same three tensions that David talks about facing as they built the temple are present for us if we want to build something of significance in 2025. So I really encourage you to lean in here, okay? Pay close attention, maybe take some notes, and I really want you to not just hear, but I want you to think about what David is saying in light of your own circumstances, in light of your own life. How do I apply this? What does this mean? Let's assume that we're not talking about the temple. We're talking about me and what God wants to build in me and through me. So what do I take away from this? First, David teaches us that great things are built on ordinary daily work. Great things are built on ordinary daily work. In verse 20, we read it a couple times, David says, "Be strong and courageous and do the work." I love this juxtaposition of something that seems so grand and bold, the strength and courage to build a temple to God. I love the juxtaposition of something that seems so huge and significant with something that seems relatively unsexy, doing the work of actually building a temple. I just want you to understand, the temple did not float down from heaven and land on the mountainside there. No, it actually took the people of God day by day building the temple the same way that any other building is built, brick by brick. Every single day, the Israelites had to choose to wake up, go out there, and do the work of building the church. There is nothing particularly sexy about walking over here and picking up a cinder block off the pile and walking over here and sitting it on the wall. And no individual cinder block is that's oh, now this is the temple, okay? But it's all of that work together, done consistently over time, that leads to something great. No individual task or person is great, but all of it coming together produces something that was great. It takes the Israelites 7 years of manual labor to actually get that incredible temple built. It was a long process of people doing ordinary daily work to make sure that something great was actually built. This is such a valuable truth for us today. Listen, a great marriage is the accumulation of 10,000 mundane moments in which you have the courage and strength to keep laying relational bricks. Do you realize that? You're like, I want a great marriage. Do you realize great marriages are built on ordinary daily work? They're built when you choose to open up when you'd rather shut down. Great marriages are built when you choose to forgive yet again. Great marriages are built when you say, you know what, babe, I don't care where we go as long as we're together. You choose dinner tonight. Great marriages are built daily on ordinary choices in which people choose to do what is right and what is going to lead to something great. It's true in other areas of our life as well. You understand this. Physical health is the accumulation of a whole bunch of small choices, isn't it? If you want great physical health, you want your body to be in great shape, then you have to choose every single day to spend time in the gym, to eat more healthy, to deny your cravings, all of those different things. It is a great thing that is built on small, daily, ordinary things. Financial health isn't obtained in one moment, but it's built over months where you choose to save rather than spend and give instead of hoard. A great spiritual life can't be built on a single time of prayer. And yet, it's those daily moments of prayer that eventually result in a mature and healthy spiritual life. Do you understand what I'm saying? So often we think that great results only come from equally great investments, but that's rarely the case. Instead, great results typically come from consistent investments. Consistency. Doing the right thing even though it's small and easy to overlook and easy to say no to, again and again, day after day. That is what eventually leads to something that's truly great. So I want to ask you, I want you to consider, okay, in the context of your own life, what are some areas in which you are hoping to see great things come about? You want to build something great. It can be relational, it could be emotional, it could be financial, it could be in the business sense, the ministry sense, whatever it is. In what areas of your life are you hoping to see great things? And then I really want you to consider. You can think about it now, but this is something you're going to have to consider Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and Saturday of this week as well. What simple, consistent work do you need to do today in order to experience something great tomorrow? What consistent thing do you need to do with your kids today so that tomorrow there is a healthier relationship in your household, right? So the second tension David points out here is that building something truly great requires building God's way. If you want to build something truly great, you have to build it God's way. In the conclusion of his speech to Solomon, there's this emphasis on God's power and faithfulness. I don't know if you noticed that. Like in verse 20, David says, it's the Lord who will ensure that the temple is built correctly. It's not merely enough that the temple gets built, it needs to be built correctly. And the Lord is the one who will assure that. It's the concern for doing it how the Lord commands. It's even more present in verse number 19. I don't know if you remember that way. I don't know if we have that on the screen or not. Yeah, it's there. Okay. So in verse 19, David says, every part of this plan was given to me in writing from the Lord's own hand. Now, the Hebrew here is kind of vague, and scholars are unsure whether what David said is essentially like the plans were all created by people under God's direction and leadership, or if David is saying God literally wrote out the plans for the temple in the same way that he literally wrote out the tablets of the Ten Commandments for Moses. It could be either one of those, but in truth, I don't even think it matters because the point remains the same. The Lord's work needs to be done the Lord's way. If you want to build something truly great, something that's honoring to God, then you have to do it the way that he commands. A God-sized goal requires a God-given plan. Now, the scripture is full of examples of how God's ways are very different from human ways of thinking. This is part of the reason that faith is so wonderful, is because it challenges the assumptions that we have, and it shows us a better path through life. In 1 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul says that God's ways often seem like foolishness to human minds, but they actually show us the path to true wisdom. Jesus said things like, it's more blessed to give than to receive. Now, I know a lot of people are like, yeah, that sounds right. But in practice, not many of us live that way. We would rather receive than give. Jesus said the way to find your life is to lose it, right? It's the meek who will inherit the earth. It's those who mourn that are blessed. James tells us that it's often the rich who are poor and the poor who are truly rich. Paul says that salvation doesn't come from our good behavior. It comes from us admitting that our behavior is not really that good. Time and time again, God subverts our expectations of how to think and how to act and how to live in the world. And so we've got to trust and obey what has been written by the Lord's hand, because building something great requires us to build it God's way. So in what areas of your life do you need to stop building your way and start doing things God's way? In what areas of your life has God said one thing and you're like, nah, I ain't doing that. I'm going to do it my way. And then if doing it your way is not producing the results that you desire, maybe it's time to stop doing it that way and to do it the Lord's way. Is it possible that the Lord won't bless your work until you do it his way? Now, I'm not saying that every failure, every time things don't go right, it's because you weren't doing it God's way. That's not my point here. But we all know there are areas of our life in which we are not doing it God's way. We've tried to do it our way, and we wonder why things are not working out. We should remember that building something truly great requires doing things God's way. Finally, David reminds us of this truth, that I may not be called to build something great, but I'm called to be part of building something great. In verse 21, David challenges Solomon to realize that he isn't going to complete this task all on his own. You realize that? David couldn't build the temple without Solomon, and Solomon is not going to be able to build the temple without everybody else in the nation of Israel. It's going to require cooperation and collaboration with all kinds of different people, including the priests and the Levites, the skilled craftsmen, the civic leaders. The entire nation would have to get involved because this was a project that was national in scope. The point is that Solomon couldn't carry the weight of building the temple all by himself. He needed to lean into the gift of help and community that God had given him. And the same is true for us. God isn't asking any individual to build the next chapter of Connect Church's story. It's not up to Amber and I. It's not up to Amber and I to build the next chapter of Connect story. We cannot do it on our own. And it's not on you either. You might hear these plans and you might hear a number like $4 million and you're like, come on, bruh. Okay, yes, I realize. With any one of us, that's ridiculous. But with all of us, it's absolutely possible. We are not necessarily called to build something great all by ourselves, but we are definitely called to be a part of building something great. And there's nothing greater that we could be a part of building than God's kingdom and God's church. I remind you, this principle holds true in every single area of your life. If you want to build something great, you shouldn't do it on your own. In fact, you probably can't do it all on your own. There is no shame in asking for help. There is no shame in letting other people support you and help you to get where God wants you to go. And there's no shame in leaning on others for support or accountability. This is why we're always reminding you of the value of being involved in a connect group or serving on the dream team. You might just be one conversation or friendship away from the next chapter in your own story. I believe it. I hope that you do too. In Genesis, God said it's not good for man to be alone. But I think it's also true, it's not good for man to build alone. You're not supposed to build. You're not supposed to do life all by yourself. Stop trying to do it that way. Instead, make room for God in the process. Make room for God's people. This is one of the keys to building something great. Hey, speaking of building something great together, this morning we're going to hear a video testimony from a family that was a part of Connect Church's launch team. What that means is they were actually a part of the church before there was ever a church. They have been around this congregation for the last 10 years, and during that decade, we, like our church and their family, have experienced God's blessings together again and again and again. I'm going to invite you to turn your eyes to the screen as we hear a testimony from Derek and Ashioma Isu.
Okay, I would say unconnected, unplugged, and just living life every day as it comes, trying to do my own thing.
And I just started looking out, but I wasn't sure what I was looking for.
Try to relate with others as much as I can, but pretty much reserved, trying to cope with family, work, and everyday life in general.
I connected with a girlfriend of mine. She told me she saw some posters that a church was coming up. I'm like, oh yeah, we should go check it out, totally. And we made the preparation, but in the end, she didn't show up. Intuitively, I kind of knew this was what I wanted, but I just couldn't place my finger on it. And that's it.
But there was one Sunday, I think I was late getting ready. So I'll use that Sunday to go to Connect. So I went to Connect that Sunday. And I left the service satisfied that indeed I heard the word of God and I received some transformation. And the message sank down and I could remember key points of that message within the week. And I was able to talk about the message with people I run into. So I said I will go next Sunday. And then from next Sunday till present. Okay, I have several instances. One would be when our baby daughter was born. She was delivered safely, everything was fine, but my wife was bleeding. And we were looking at ourselves eyeball to eyeball. And then either I called Pastor Dan or I texted him, and few minutes he arrived. And it was surprising. And we explained the situation and he prayed. And indeed the bleeding stopped.
I knew I had stumbled into something awesome because the message was always simple, but yet profound and transformational. And ever since then, it's just been in my heart, impressed in my heart, because every time we come, it's blessing upon blessing, and it's something we look forward to every Sunday. I would say they should keep looking to Jesus, believing and trusting in Him, and get plugged in, get connected, reach out to your pastors. Our pastors are awesome. They're there. They want to pray with you. They want to pray for you and agree with you for whatever that need might be. Because the prayer goes a long way, and we truly want to be able to connect and pray with one another and see God's hand move on behalf of whatever the situation could be. And so please don't stay silent. Come out of your comfort zone and reach out. People are just waiting to pray with you and support you, encourage you. I just want to say that Connect is big enough. The room is plenty. We can't wait to welcome you, to receive you, to welcome you to the family of God, where we do life together. And there's so many people that need the touch of God. And Connect, as the name is just waiting to connect you back to God as well. First off, I want to say a very big thank you from the bottom of our hearts for what you do, for living generously with your time, your tithes, your offerings. And we want to let you know that God sees you. He's not going to stop blessing you. I just want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. You just don't know whose day you're making when you're serving and you're giving, because God is here. God is doing awesome things. He's going to do awesome things in your life, just as He has done for us. And we really, truly, and dearly thank you. We just can't thank you enough. We love you.